Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. So this is part 2 of a video where I talk about yoga and science, which is a very silly dichotomy again, but I'm talking about in more detail what I view as a arbitrary and unnecessary conflict between the scientific systems and the spiritual systems. So the theme for this video is the hard problem of consciousness and the conflict between the axioms of science and the axioms of yoga sadhana, the axioms of the Eastern systems. Now, science fundamentally rests on 3 axioms, and an axiom is basically an assumption based on experience. So if we experience continually something in life, that informs how we view the world, and that becomes an axiom. So the 3 axioms of science, the 3 fundamental assumptions of science is realism, materialism, and determinism, or realism, naturalism, and determinism. Realism means that there is one observable and quantifiable reality. Naturalism means that everything is a part of the physical world or a part of nature. That is why you can use the term naturalism or materialism. And it basically postulates that everything in the universe can be observed by observing the world of matter or the world of nature. And the last axiom of science is determinism, which basically states that everything that happens is predetermined by past phenomena or past occurrences. So, how does the 3 axioms of science relate to the Eastern systems? How are these applicable to yoga? So now I'm going to treat these 3 one by one and look at whether they're applicable to the Eastern systems as well. So the first one is realism, that there is one observable and quantifiable reality, that reality is a size in itself, something that is singular. There is one reality. Yes, this is accepted by yoga, this is accepted by Buddhism, this is accepted by traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. But there is reality beyond matter. And within the Eastern systems, the world of consciousness or the world of mind is counted as a part of reality. Moreover, the world of matter, the world of nature, is seen as only a microspeck of the whole of reality. So the world of nature, the world that can be observed and quantified, is seen as Maya. Is seen as, illusion is the wrong term actually, but Maya essentially means a play. The world of matter, as we observe it, is based on our sensory equipment. So when we observe the world, we do not observe the world in itself. We observe a picture, a projection that's based on our sensory capacity. Our eyes, our ears, our capacity to hear, our capacity to see. And we do know that there are colors that can't be seen by the human eye, such as infrared and ultraviolet, that can be seen by other life forms. So the world we see, the world we perceive, is by necessity dependent on our sensory capacity and the sensory equipment that God or nature has given us. So there's not really a conflict here, as you see, but yoga would say, the Eastern system would say that yes, there is a reality, but mind is a fundamental player of that reality. The mind is actually the architect behind that reality. And that does not in yoga only apply to how we perceive things, but the entire world in the yogic system, the entire world in Buddhism, is perceived as a projection of mind, as something that is within consciousness. And the second axiom of science, namely naturalism or materialism, is accepted by the yogic systems, by the Vedic systems to a certain extent, but again here, the Eastern system would say that the scientific axiom here is only telling one half of the story, and the rest of the story being consciousness, what everything exists within. So yes, the Eastern systems would agree that everything can be observed through observing nature, everything is a part of nature. But the Eastern systems would say that the nature of human consciousness and the nature of mind is an intrinsic and unalienable part of this nature, this matter. Moreover, in the Eastern systems, we have this idea about, in yoga or in Shaivite Tantrika, we call it Shiv and Shakti. So Shakti is the world of matter, the world of movement, and the world of energy. But Shakti is one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is Shiva, which is consciousness. So we would say that what we can observe in the world of matter is the three-dimensional projection of consciousness, but consciousness is the other side of that coin. So again here, as you can see, there is not disagreement, but the yogic systems and the Eastern systems would just, again here, intervene and say that, yes, everything is part of nature, and by observing the world of nature, we can observe reality, but consciousness is an unalienable part of that nature. In fact, this leads us to the hard problem of consciousness, where science is trying to prove where consciousness originates in the nervous system and the brain, whereas the Eastern systems would say that the brain, the nervous system, your body, everything rests within the lap of consciousness, which is actually the fundamental difference between the systems. Last one is determinism, which states that everything that happens is already predetermined. This is rejected by the Eastern systems. The Eastern system says that you can change your body. You can't grow wings and a tail unless you're very arduous in your sadhana. But the Eastern system says that no, you can influence the development of disease in your body, even though you might be genetically predetermined. The Eastern systems state that you, by your actions, by your karma, right here and right now, can change the course of your fate, can change the course of the future. So here is a point of disagreement between the Eastern and the Western systems. However, there is a strong deterministic aspect to the Eastern systems, because they say that whatever happens in your life is a result of your karma at some point. Karma is also a term that is hugely misunderstood, and I'm going to make another video on what the actual meaning of the terms karma and samsara and nirvana actually are, because they're very related and very often misunderstood. Anyways, this leads us to the hard problem of consciousness. The hard problem of consciousness is simply that consciousness is non-observable and non-quantifiable. We cannot observe consciousness in the brain, and we do not know where in the body consciousness originates from. In the Eastern systems, this has been solved 3,000 years ago. In the Eastern systems, everything is viewed as being part of consciousness. So instead of looking at consciousness within the body, the Eastern systems have said that the body exists as a phenomena or as a concept within consciousness. Everything exists as concepts within consciousness, within Shiva. And here's the hard point between the two, because within the Eastern systems, you have to operate with the idea that everything is a part of consciousness. Your body is consciousness in material form. The sun is consciousness. The chair you're sitting on is part of consciousness. Everything is created and maintained, upheld by consciousness. Which is, I guess, the place where scientific thought differs from spiritual thought. This leads us to the problem of causality. The Eastern systems, they prescribe a lot of practices for certain things. And the argument that Jon originally made that led me to make this video was it might be true that, say, turmeric in Ayurveda is used as a remedy for a lot of things, and that scientific studies are actually showing the validity of the claims being made in Ayurveda about turmeric. But how did they know this? Because a lot of people then say, oh, look, Ayurveda is scientific. But then the argument, which is a very natural and actually a very good argument to pose, is how were the Ayurvedic doctors and Ayurvedic practitioners of the past, or the yogis of the past, able to know this? All right, so here we're stepping on to deep waters. Within the Eastern systems, we employ other methods of observing reality than the senses. You can accept this as possible, or you can reject it, and that's pretty much up to you. Within yoga and within Ayurveda, there are other ways of knowing. There are other ways of observing the universe beyond the realm of the physical senses. Many people would call this intuition, and I think the term intuition is a little bit inflated because it's commonly used to refer to listening to everything your mind tells you to do, which is not the case. The human organism, the human system, and now I'm referring to the human system on all layers, not only the physical, is a very, very capable machine, it's a very capable tool. And in yoga, we claim that this tool, this mechanical organism that is the human being, can be finely tuned, and the sensitivity of your mind, the sensitivity of your consciousness, can be trained to perceive dimensions of reality that is far beyond the physical. In yoga, we talk about the kleshas, and the kleshas it means sheath, so like the bed sheet, klesha. We talk about the kleshas, and kleshas are the sheets that surround consciousness. So at the innermost point, you have pure consciousness, but then consciousness clothes itself in different layers of reality, you could say, in different layers of manifestation. So the outermost layer is the physical. So the physical is the jacket of consciousness. It's the outermost sheath that surrounds pure consciousness. But then beyond the physical sheath, in yoga, in Ayurveda, in TCM, we have an energetic sheath. We have a mental body, we have an emotional body, we have a spiritual body. And it's believed in the yogic systems and the Eastern systems as a whole that you can work on the physical body to treat what is physical, which is what you do in Western medicine. But we also claim that if you work directly on the energy body, then what is a problem in the physical body will take care of itself, because the energy is further in towards consciousness. So in Ayurveda, we say that the human being is a tree which has its roots upside down. So the root of the human being is pure consciousness. And if you can awake that, if you can stir that within you, then the rest of the system is going to take care of itself, and it's going to adjust itself after the innermost layers. So this is kind of an hierarchical view of looking at the human being, where the body is only a result of what's going on in the other sheets. So within the traditional medicinal systems, within the traditional spiritual systems, the human being is looked as something holographic, that if you influence one dimension of a human being, it's going to have an impact on the rest of the dimensions. So it's more wholesome and it's more holistic. And a lot of people say that as well when they seek alternative methods of treatment, that they feel that the alternative methods of treatments, they look at the entire human being and its relationship to the world around him or her, not only the one ailment or that singular sickness that is plaguing you right now. So within the yogic systems, we would say that if you have an issue in your physical body, that's going to have a mental correlate. So we would be able to see a mental reflex of the issue in your body, and it would have an emotional correlate, and there would also be blockages or stuff going on in your energy systems. And we would treat all of those things at the same time, which is why the systems of the East work with diet, the emotional layer, we work with the mind through meditation, we work with the body, all of those things at once, because we believe that the human organism is a holographic ecological organism, and that everything within you has influence on all other aspects of you as an organism. I also want to point out that I cannot claim that the causality and the epistemology of yoga and Ayurveda are scientifically valid, because most often they're not. But it's very, very interesting to look at our past, because I find that in modern times, it's almost as if we believe that the entire world began in the 1700s with the scientific revolution, and before that everybody was under the yoke of tyrannical and dogmatic religion, which is not the case at all. Science and scientific inquiry and the scientific method has always been an intrinsic part of a lot of the world's religions. It's false to assume that Islam has always suppressed science, because it's simply not true. Science has always been an intrinsic part of the Islamic religion. The same with Christianity. Science has been, within Christianity up until very recently, science has been the study of God, because through science you study the work of the Creator himself. The same goes with India. India has an enormous scientific tradition through the Vedic religions, through the Hindu religions. Claiming that all religion is by necessity unscientific is very, very arrogant, and it's very obviously based on not knowing enough history. There are also very interesting parts of history. So if you look at the world beyond the Middle Ages, if you go to the Bronze Age, you see that the world wasn't necessarily this kind of unilluminated backwater that a lot of people seem to think that it was. There was extensive communication within the world in the Bronze Age, like about 3,000, 3,500 years ago. There was communication between Oslo, Scandinavia, and Greece. There was communication between India and the Roman Empire. These things were going on, and you had civilizations like thousands of years ago that had advanced systems of, for example, irrigation or sewage. So I'd highly recommend people looking at these aspects of history as well, because there might be that they had methods of scientific observation that were lost. I highly recommend a book called Starships that I'll link below if any of you want to have a look at that. So, summing up, I've probably talked myself a little bit away today. I'll be the first one to admit that the system of scientific epistemology, empirical studies, and causality is not present in the yogic and Ayurvedic systems as we know them today. I still hope, and I'm very grateful to see, that a lot of studies are being conducted on these methods. Again, just to sum that up, a very firm distinction, sadly, between science and spirituality is that within spiritual systems, we look at sheets beyond the physical, and we claim that there are dimensions of reality, layers to reality, that is beyond the physical, and that the physical, the rupa, is only the outer sheet of reality. The physical is only a play orchestrated by our minds and our senses, and that real reality, or how should you say, higher resolution reality, lies beyond the physical. And by going at the levels of the human being that is beyond the physical, higher and more essential than physical, we will in turn influence the physical dimension as well. I can't point to any studies that shows this, but I can point to direct experience and I guess the experience of all of my students. A lot of my students sign up for the yoga classes and the yoga courses that I teach, not assuming that they're actually going to experience something energetically. They think that that's for certain people, or that that's just placebo or superstition, and then they wake up at 3:30 in the night and feel Kundalini dancing in their Shushumna. This is very common, and it's very fun because I try to avoid suggestive teaching. So I never say, look for these kind of feelings or try to feel something. I allow these things to take place ecologically, naturally, because the system of yoga works that way. If you do certain things with your body, with your breath, with your voice, with your mind, with your heart, results are going to follow, and the results are often striking. I've had a lot of students text me in the middle of the night the first time they experience a Kundalini awakening, and people refer to that as being touched by God. People refer to it as electrical serpents dancing in their stomach. People refer to it in a lot of ways, but it is an observable thing that does happen if you practice correctly. I hope this video was of values as well. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something useful. I hope you learned something that you can use to argument without creating further polarization and conflict. And I hope I was able to shed some light on the epistemology and causality of the spiritual systems. If I said anything wrong, if I said anything you're in disagreement with, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and may all beings be happy and free of suffering.